Hey guys, so for this experiment, I want to use a song that Julie Ann requested for Roundabout by the band Yes. She requested it in a video I did all the way back in July. So if you're totally new to these experiments, I would suggest you watch the first video I did called The God Experiment. Try it with music and get amazing results. And I'll put a link to the first video in the description below that I did with this experiment. But basically, these experiments are built around the results of the double slit experiment. As most of y'all probably already know, the double slit experiment proved that it's the act of observation that collapses the probability wave into particles. It proves that consciousness is the real measuring instrument that collapses the probability wave, and it literally constructs perceivable reality. I think this is true on both an individual and a collective level. And it's fairly easy to see how this is possible when we consider that we're holographic consciousness fractals of God. And since the act of hearing music isn't something that happens outside of consciousness, we as individualized holographic consciousness fractals of God can actually influence how the probability wave of the lyrics are perceived within our own awareness. I want you guys to really try this experiment. I want you to use your ability to collapse the probability wave from music into an audible message from God, which sounds pretty crazy until you actually experience it for yourself. And I call this the God experiment because it uses music to reflect your soul. And when I say your soul, really I'm talking about God's soul, because it doesn't belong to you. Your soul doesn't belong to you. Your soul belongs to God. It's the same with all five of our senses. Experiencing your five senses wouldn't be possible without God. And I'm pretty sure God is able to experience through your five senses too. By perceiving with your five senses, your consciousness literally collapses the wave of probability and brings it into perceivable existence. So through your consciousness observing, you experience your life. I mean, what would a song be for you personally without you being present to hear it? Who gives meaning to the song? Every moment is a moment of creation, and God is constantly using us to experience His creation. I know this quote-unquote world makes it hard to remember that, but it's true. We play a role in creation as well, since we're holographic consciousness fractals of God. Every moment that you perceive or observe, you are constantly collapsing waves of probability into perceivable existence. Think of your five senses as different ways to experience God's creation. And I said this before in my last video, but where is the line drawn between our experience and what God experiences? I really can't tell you. I'm not saying that we are God to those people who, out there who want to be judgmental. I'm just saying that we're holographic consciousness fractals of God. So I want to get into how to do this experiment. And if you watched my first video, then you already know the methodology. So I'm going to put a link below that you can just click on to fast forward to the results part of this video. But for those of you who are new, I'm going to use the directions from my first video to just quickly explain how to do it and then get to the results. So to get started with the experiment, I usually give the handout reading explaining the methodology for the experiment. In it, I just explained that the first step is to change the communication angle. So instead of only using the song and seeing it as a story about a romantic relationship, make the choice to observe or imagine that the meaning of the song has expanded to include higher forms of relationships. So we're not talking about the song being about boyfriend and girlfriend stuff. The song is going to be talking about your relationship with your higher power, and it doesn't really matter which song you choose. Just know that when the song mentions love, that it's talking about the love between you and your higher power, not like romantic love. So while listening to the song, the very first step in this experiment, and probably the most important step, is to ask yourself in your mind, if my higher power could sing me a song, what would my higher power sing to me about? Asking yourself this question will help you to collapse that probability wave into an observation that yields higher frequency results. And just a side note, just know when I say higher power, I'm talking about God. But anyways, your observation of who you observe is singing the lyrics to you is called a communication angle. Depending on how your observation collapses the probability wave, multiple different communication angles can be present within a single song. For example, you could observe that one verse in a song is being sung to you by your higher power, while another verse in the same song seems like it's being sung to you by a good friend. And really, it all depends on how well you're able to focus your communication angle on your higher power. So you're going to want to, in your mind, you're going to want to keep asking yourself, if my higher power could sing me a song, what would my higher power sing to me about? That's extremely important that you do that, because that's going to help with you collapsing that probability wave. So the more you're able to focus your communication angle on your higher power while your mind is simultaneously observing or decoding the auditory probability wave, the better. So as you're listening to the song, be focusing on God. Is it possible for two people hearing the same song to observe different messages even though they are hearing the exact same words? Yes, each person has their own unique perspective. As living beings, we were all given the ability to collapse probability waves through our observation in order to construct the reality that we perceive. This is proven by the double slit experiment. As the vibration of your consciousness starts to rise, you'll be able to decode higher levels of meaning from the music. Individuals experiencing a lower negative level of awareness while doing the experiment may reflect their lower negative level of awareness onto the meaning of the song. Remember, your mind acts as a filter that the information flows through. The number one rule to follow when conducting this experiment is that lyric decoding must be mostly positive. Why? Because a loving relationship with your higher power is based on a positive, higher frequency connection. You have to match frequencies. Messages can be decoded through wordplay with metaphors and homophones. Feel free to use metaphors because metaphors are one way to convey a deeper meaning. Metaphors are words or phrases that are used to give words a different meaning that differs from the literal meaning of the word. So, for example, the word night could be used as the metaphor to mean a depressing time in one's life instead of the literal meaning of the sky after sunset. Another example is using the word day to represent an awakening to life that is connected with God. instead of defining the meaning of day as a period where the sun's not out. You can use the following metaphor examples below or come up with your own metaphors. So here are some examples of metaphors. Alive represents the best version of yourself. Light represents love. And all of these metaphors, I didn't sit down ahead of time before listening to the song and write out a list of metaphors. All of these metaphors have just kind of come up naturally as I'm hearing the song. So just over time, all of these different metaphors just started to kind of pop up. So it's not really something that you'll have to sit down and work really hard on and make out a physical list. So they'll just kind of come to you as you're listening to the music. But call me. So in the song, when you're hearing the lyrics and you mention them sing about call me, that could represent asking for help. Home could represent a place where a person can connect with their higher power. When you're listening to the lyrics and you hear the song mention the word asleep, that word could represent being blind to your own potential to be great. Awake represents being fully aware of the best version of yourself. On represents being conscious or awake to a positive state of mind that you can tap into to form a stronger relationship with your higher power. The words awake and on are kind of like synonyms. They kind of mean the same thing. So when you're listening to the song and they mention on, they mention the word on, it basically means awake. World could represent yourself. House could represent yourself. When you're listening to the lyrics and they sing the word words, words could represent the logos or word of your higher power. Ocean or river could represent a place where you're able to merge or connect with your higher power. Home represents a place where you connect with your higher power. Weather represents your emotions. A lot of songs you'll hear talking about, sunshine or rain. It's a much deeper meaning to that. Phone or radio represents your higher power's natural ability to communicate with your soul. So when you're listening to this song and it mentions a phone or a radio, it's not the literal meaning where it's like a physical phone that you're using to dial, but it's a metaphor. It's the same with the word radio. When they sing about the word radio in a song, represents your higher power's natural ability to communicate with your soul. So walk could also be a metaphor, and then dance could be a metaphor. Another way that decoding is going to happen is through homophones. Listen for homophones that denote a positive meaning within the song. Homophones are words that sound the same but have more than one spelling and meaning. For example, you could switch the word no to no within the lyrics to alter the meaning of the verse. Another example is switching the word see to mean see to alter the meaning of the lyrics. Other examples of homophones include sun and sun, new and new, here and here, high and high, whole and whole, one and one, stare and stare, wine and wine, night and night, and peace and peace. Wordplay can also include, but is not limited to, inserting or taking away periods to form new sentences in order to decode new meaning, combining two words to form one word in order to decode a new meaning within the song, separating a single word into two words to decode a new meaning. There is no limits really with wordplay because there are no limits within poetry, and music is a form of poetry. And often, the words themselves won't even need to change because it may be enough to only change the meaning behind how the word is defined. Remember, songs tell the story of our lives. Okay, so now that I've gone over the directions on how to do the experiment, I want you guys to try it on your own before I give you the results that I got. Use your perception to collapse and decode the probability wave through your observation. Now, I can't play any songs on this video because I'll get a copyright strike, but I want you to pause my video and listen to the song that I put in the description below. It's called Roundabout by the band Yes. Now, remember, when you're listening to the lyrics, ask yourself in your mind, if my higher power could sing me a song, what would my higher power sing to me about? And really focus on hearing the lyrics through as though your higher power were singing the words to you. In order to do this experiment, it's important that you make the choice to observe a higher communication angle, because that helps you raise the vibration wave of the lyrics, and it'll set the stage to make it easier for a higher meaning to be transmitted through the song. Now, it may take a little practice to kind of tune in to a higher, more positive way of thinking in order to pick up on the messages, but the first step and the most important step is changing the communication angle of the song. Once you're able to do that, and then the metaphors and wordplay will start to just flow naturally from the song. And if you want, you can print the PDF handouts in the description below, so you can just start out by maybe circling the words that stick out to you as having a positive meaning from your higher power as you're hearing the song. And don't put too much pressure on yourself to decode the entire song. It may only be a couple words in the whole song that stick out to you as having a higher meaning. It'll be different words or verses that'll stick out to you more than others. Now, I want y'all to remember that your state of mind acts as a filter that the information flows through. So if you can, try to be in a relaxed, positive state when you're listening. And I'm not trying to get any copyright strikes, so I'm going to put a link to the Roundabout song in the description. So pause this video, click on the song below, then come back to this video, and while you're listening to the Roundabout song, be asking yourself throughout the song, what kind of message would my higher power want to tell me through the words of this song? And make the choice to observe the lyrics as though your higher power were singing to you. Okay, now that you're back from listening to the Roundabout song, I want to show you some of my results that I got. The amazing thing about this experiment is that each person gets an individualized message from God. It's kind of like we're antennas that are picking up on different messages from the one universal signal of love that's being sent out. So, even though we're decoding the same song, different people will pick up on different messages. Depending on the level of awareness, your observation collapses the probability wave at to perceive the signal, if that makes sense. And remember too that your mind acts like a filter that the information has to filter through. Okay, so I got results by asking myself in my mind as I'm listening to the song, if my higher power could sing me a song, what would my higher power sing to me about? In the first line of the song, it says, I'll be the roundabout, the words will make you out and out. Now, by asking myself as I'm listening to the song, if my higher power could sing me a song, what would my higher power sing to me about? My mind was able to collapse the probability wave and observe or pick up on a communication angle from my higher power, basically saying, I'll be roundabout, or I'll be round you. That's what this is about. That's the message I decoded when I heard the lyrics in the song saying, "I'll be the roundabout." And keep in mind now, a lot of these messages you won't get all necessarily in a grammatically correct sentence, because we're asking something so big and vast to condense itself into a few words. So we won't always get grammatically complete sentences that meet our current language standards. I think it's a miracle that magnificence can even be condensed into any set of words. But after that, the song says the words will make you out and out. The word words in that part of the song stuck out to me as being a metaphor for the Word of God. It even goes on to say the words will, which I decoded as the Word of God is God's will. Now keep in mind, the probability wave is collapsed by changing the communication angle while you're listening to the song. So it's important that you make the choice to change who is singing the song to you in order to be able to tune into and observe these higher messages. If not, you'll just end up hearing a song with no deeper meaning. Anyways, after the song says the words will, it says make you out and out. So I observed from the communication angle of my higher power that part is a reference to going within yourself, or your God center within, to get out of this lower realm that we're currently in. And when I say get out, I'm not necessarily talking about our quote unquote physical body going somewhere. I'm talking about the level of our consciousness moving from a lower level to a higher level of being that allows us to feel more love and connection to Source. So put everything together. The message I decoded from the lines that says the words will make you out and out, I tuned into it meaning the Word of God is God's will. It will make you go within to get out of this lower state of being. I also got a double meaning from the line to mean the words of this song will make you go within to get out of this lower realm. I think the Word of God can be transmitted through this song and many other songs, depending on how you are able to collapse the probability wave and how well you're able to hear the message through your own mind filter. A lot of times the mind, and when I say mind, all I'm talking about is our thought process, much of which is conditioned. Often the mind has a way of making us dismiss communication with our higher power and ignore it, but we have to overcome that. The next verse says, I spend the day your way, calling it morning, I spend the day your way, call it morning, driving through the sound, and in and out the valley, the music, dance, and sing, they make the children really ring. Within that verse, the word day and morning were decoded as having the same metaphorical meaning of waking up to a deeper connection with my higher power. Because what do you do in the morning? We wake up and we rise. I think consciousness will literally rise up to be closer to God. And I'm not saying your body will necessarily move, but your state of consciousness will rise to a higher state and you will feel it. And the morning is the start of the day. So I observed morning and day to have the same metaphorical meaning. And lots of songs, for me, morning represents awakening to my God center. And just like I said in the last video, the homophone morning, mourning, doesn't come up for me during my observation, because that form of mourning is at a lower frequency meaning, which has nothing to do with my personal relationship with God. So just wanted to, make that clear for anybody out there wanting to attach their own personal lower frequency meaning to my personal observation that I decoded for myself. Anyways, by collapsing the probability wave, by asking myself, what would my higher power sing to me about if he could sing me a song, I decoded the next part of the verse that says, call it morning, driving through the sound and in and out the valley. The message that I got from that was higher power telling me the call of morning or spiritual awakening is driving through the sound of this music, which will take you within yourself in order to connect with higher power and get out of this valley, with valley being a metaphor for a lower state of consciousness. The next part of the verse says, the music dance and sing, they make the children really ring. The message I decoded and that was pretty straightforward. And for me, the word ring showed up as a metaphor for a wedding ring, which is symbolic of marrying or joining with your higher power. For me, ring has a double meaning of also being a metaphor for the ringing that I get in my ears, which I've had off and on since I was really little. But it seems like the more my relationship with God grows, the more I get the ringing. Now, some people may choose to believe that the ear ringing is nefarious, and that's their personal choice. But for me personally, there's been way too many coincidences where the ear ringing seemed benevolent. I'll never forget this one time, and this was when I was first waking up many years ago, and I was seeing things that I'm not even gonna go too deep into, but things within people that were not of a higher place. And I was about to have an anxiety attack. My whole body was tensed up and my legs were starting to cramp up, and out of nowhere I heard this high-pitched tone or ringing in my ears that was so loud that it kind of startled me a little bit. But instantly the pain in my legs went away and the anxiety went away and was gone, like instantly. Up until that point, I had been kind of questioning what the ringing meant, whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. But that situation pretty much answered my question on that. Now, I'm still not exactly sure what it is exactly, but I know that the ringing comes from a higher place. And I'm not gonna decode the whole song because I don't want this video to be too long, but there are so many different metaphors and references that I decoded from this song that it's just so blatantly obvious that this song is talking about God. One part of the song that really stood out to me was the part that said, 24 before my love, you'll see I'll be there with you, I will remember you, your silhouette will charge the view of distance atmosphere. First off, the 24 is yet another reference to day, which, like I said, is a reference to morning or spiritual awakening. And then it goes on to say, you'll see I'll be there with you, I will remember you. When I do this experiment and collapse the probability wave with from the communication angle of my higher power singing the song, it becomes very clear that higher power is saying for me, you'll see I'll be there with you, I will remember you, and you will remember me. I cannot convey just how clear some of these messages come across, but you have to start doing these experiments with your own songs on your own to really see for yourself. Also, the part that says I will remember you, I also decoded it as higher power telling me you will remember me. See, the thing about these experiments is that the lines between the pronouns like me and you, we, us, they, your, my, he, she, those lines between who a specific pronoun is referring to really start to blur when it comes to who we're talking about in the song. And I guess it makes sense that the lines between pronouns would start to blur when you really consider that God really does embody oneness. And I talked about this in my other video, but often you'll hear your higher power refer to himself as you, because it's almost like God is saying he's so close to you that the word I and you can be used interchangeably in the lyrics, if that makes sense. Also, I observed a double meaning of I will being a reference to God's will in the line that says, I will remember you. The lyrics then go on to say, your silhouette will charge the view of distance atmosphere. So I asked myself, what would my higher power sing to me about if my higher power could sing me a song? And I decoded the word view as a metaphor for point of view or perspective. Distance atmosphere is a metaphor for a higher state of consciousness or higher dimension, depending on how you look at it. So the message I got from my higher power in that part was, your perspective or observation will allow you to charge, i.e. move forward into a distant atmosphere or dimension where you will experience a higher state of consciousness. Now, in one of the repeating lines it says, call it morning, driving through the sound. Notice the song mentions the word driving. I decoded multiple meanings from driving. And what you'll find in many different songs is that there's lots of references to driving, taking a train, bus, car, ship, boat, plane. You'll hear lots of references to modes of transportation or ways of moving. For me, all of these are metaphors for the consciousness arc. And this term isn't just something that I came up with on my own. The person I heard use this term, well, I don't know if this person wants me to mention their name, but if you're listening, you know who you are, and I want to thank you for being such a bright light for so many people. The consciousness arc is basically what it sounds like. It's a state of consciousness that's used to transport your sense of being to a place of deep peace and love. Not so much your body, but your consciousness, a place where you feel a very strong connection to your higher power, like it's tangible. So when you're listening to different songs and they mention modes of transportation like a bus, a ship, or especially a train. Now, a train is used so many times in songs because it has that double meaning, since it can be a verb or a noun. So there's training someone to learn something, and then there's the actual noun of a train. So songs like Long Train Running by the Doobie Brothers, Midnight Train to Georgia, 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover by Paul Simon, Ticket to Ride, I could just go on and on. Those kind of songs all make references to the consciousness arc. There's a lot of different songs, all with the same universal messages. With this song, right after it says, call it morning, driving through the sound, it even goes on to mention in and around the lake. So I just wanted to point that out. For me, it was a definite reference to the consciousness arc. Lots of songs, in lots of songs you'll hear references to the new earth, which makes sense when you consider that in metaphorical terms, the place that the consciousness arc is going is new land or the new earth. It's all connected, guys. In the next part of the song, it says, I'll be there with you along the drifting cloud, the eagle searching down on the land, catching the swirling wind, the sailor sees the rim of the land. Now, I decoded that as higher power telling me he'll be there with me as the sky continues to change. And I won't go too deep into that line because in the first video, I kind of already talked about how as we continue to move closer to God, the sky will start to literally look different, with it looking more expanded and the clouds appearing closer and everything appearing closer in the sky. But the main part of that verse that I want to talk about is the part that says, catching the swirling wind, the sailor sees the rim of the land. Again, what's said about sailors and the rim of the land is another reference to the consciousness arc sailing to the land of the new world. When I collapsed the probability wave, I decoded wind as being a metaphor for negative energy or opposition. As you do these experiments, you'll hear lots of references to weather. For me, weather is a metaphor for our emotions. Swirling wind definitely stood out to me as the overwhelming emotions we get sometimes as we're trying to navigate our journey. But often we can use those negative emotions to help guide us to a higher emotion or state of being. We can use that negative wind to motivate us to move out of that place of unhappiness and into a more positive place. So in this song, I decoded the part that says, catching the swirling wind, the sailor sees the rim of the land to mean higher power telling me, by catching and transforming the swirling wind into a higher frequency, the consciousness arc sailors are able to see the rim of the land of a new earth or new world. The next part of the song even goes on to say, the eagle's dancing wings create as weather spins out of hand. Go closer, hold the land. So I don't know how much more obvious the lyrics could be in conveying these kinds of messages. That's definitely a reference to the consciousness arc. Well, for me anyway. So I could spend hours decoding this song, but I won't because, like I said, I don't want this video to be too long. But this was a really good song, so thank you, Julianne, for requesting it. The last part of my results that I want to share is the line that says, next to your deeper fears we stand, surrounded by a million years. So in my mind, I collapsed the probability wave by asking myself, if my higher power could sing me a song, what would my higher power sing to me about? From the communication angle of my higher power singing the lyrics to me, I decoded it to mean we have to confront our deeper fears that this place is not what we thought it was. But after we confront and overcome that fear, we will stand surrounded by a million years of peace on the new earth or new world. So I'll put a printable PDF link below in the description with directions and a printout of the lyrics for you guys to do this experiment on your own. Really, all you need to do this experiment is just music. You could even do it when you're in your car with the radio on. It's really easy. The only thing you have to do is just remember to ask yourself, if my higher power could sing me a song, what would my higher power sing to me about? And listen to the song as though your higher power were singing the lyrics. Now, I know some people will try to say that certain music was made by the elite music industry, so the meaning couldn't possibly have anything to do with God. But to that I say, it doesn't matter who is singing the song, because this experiment is meant to be a reflection of your own God-centered consciousness. And we have to remember that source is at the root of every single human voice. That person would not even exist to be able to sing if God wasn't the source of not only that person, but the sound wave frequency itself. And a lot of what you'll be able to decode will actually depend on your state of consciousness or awareness as you're hearing the music. You may hear a song and get a message, and then at a later time hear that same song when you're in a slightly different state of awareness and pick up on a different message from the same set of lyrics in the same song. And I've said this before, but one thing I'm learning is that there are layers and layers of messages that can be decoded. I think as holographic consciousness fractals of God, it's our job to try to get our vibration as high as possible in order to get as close as we can to God's frequency. That way we can be high up enough to tune in to receive those higher messages in the music. And that's where the consciousness arc comes in. It's the training of yourself through the grace of God to connect and understand that there is never a time when He's not trying to convey how much He loves you. Don't you think if God could use music to communicate with you, He would? But God has given us our own free will, so we have to make the choice to use the music. Use the music to get on the consciousness arc, to sail closer to Him through the waves, through the sound waves. You have to train yourself to get on the train, so to speak. But yeah, be listening for modes of transportation in the lyrics. Words like train, boat, ship, bus, plane, car, driving. Those are all references to the consciousness arc, because they're all means to get you from one place to another. And that's what music is. It's a means to get you from this place into a higher place, closer to God.